In this small lesson, we're going to learn to read some sentences or portions of sentences that contain the verb possum and the infinitive. This is just step one in the process because we are not focusing on an entire sentence that has prepositional phrases and direct objects and indirect objects. We're only focused on the subject, the verb possum, and its infinitive. This is our first example, possum legere. The first thing that we want to be able to do is understand what tense the verb possum is in. Well, I do that by looking at the form of sum in possum. Sum is in the present tense. So possum is in the present tense, and the M on possum tells me that the subject is I. So I have to start this translation with I am able. And then I complete the meaning of the infinitive by translating the infinitive, legere, see it right here? And remember that the translation is just the translation given on the vocabulary list. I am able to read. So that's the translation of possum legere. Let's look at this next example. Poteratis currere. Notice that this time the verb ends with eratis. Eratis means that this verb is in the imperfect tense. So I have to say was able or were able depending on the subject. The letters TIS tell me that the subject is you. You don't have to say you plural when you're translating a sentence. You just want to say you because we don't go around looking and reading things and saying you plural. We just say you. So poteratis, you were able, and then I have the infinitive currere. See, it's right here, the second principal part, and I must translate it to run. So this phrase is you were able to run. Poteremus videre. Remember that when you look at the verb, the first thing you want to be able to do is determine is it in the present, the past, or the future. I see eremus. Eremus means this is in the future tense. Remember, when the verb to be starts with ERI, that makes it future. Poteremus. We, where'd the we come from? Well, from the MUS. That's where we comes from. So the subject of this form of the verb is we. We will be able, and then I need to complete that with the infinitive. I see the infinitive right here, and remember I'm going to translate the infinitive with the translation that's given to me. We will be able to see. Oops, I don't have the correct translation there. This is not right. Right? It's supposed to say we will be able to see. Right? We will be able to see. Let's look at this example. Let me move my face over so we can see the entire sentence. Regina non ambulare potest. So this is a little bit longer. Now, instead of using the ending of the verb as my subject, right? This ending tells me that my subject is he, she, or it. But instead of using he, she, or it as the subject, I'm going to use the noun Regina as my subject. Remember that when the noun in the sentence looks the same as the first word of the noun on the vocabulary list, this is its subject form. This is its subject. So Regina non potest. Pay attention to what tense we're in. Potest is in the present tense. The queen is not able. Ambulare. By now you know that this infinitive must be translated like this: to walk. The queen is not able to walk. Let's see if we're right. The queen is not able to walk. Let's look at the next one. Milites vincere poterunt. Notice that when I look at the verb, I see the letters NT on the verb. That means my subject is plural. So milites is my plural subject. How do I know that? Well, if I look at the ending of this verb, which is supposed to be is, militis, that is tells me it's third declension. And third declension nouns, if I look on my noun chart, have a nominative plural ending that's es. So that's my subject. The soldiers. Now what tense is poterunt in? Well, anytime a form of to be starts with eru, that makes it in the future tense. So poterunt is will be able. So this sentence says the soldiers will be able. To conquer. I forgot to put in my infinitive translation. To conquer. The soldiers will be able to conquer. And we have one more example to look at. Pater non invenire poterat. Have you noticed that in the last three sentences, the infinitive has come in front of the form of to be able? Right? See how ambulare comes in front of potest? But in the first three examples, it was the form of to be able, and then the infinitive came after it. So you should be prepared to see that both ways when we read Latin. Most of the time when we are reading Latin sentences, the infinitive will come in front of potest. And you'll see potest or whatever form of the verb to be able at the end of the sentence, like we do here. So that's just something you need to get used to, that the infinitive often comes, when we're reading a Latin sentence, it often comes in front of the verb to be able. Let's take a look at our verb to be able and see if we can decide what tense it's in. Erat, E-R-A, makes this in the past tense or the imperfect. And I see that it ends with the letter T. That means my subject is he, she, or it, or has to be a singular noun. I notice pater looks exactly the same as this first word on the entry on the vocabulary list, which means pater is the nominative or the subject form. So this is where I start my translation. Father was, and I have to make it negative, was not able, and then I put in the translation of my infinitive, to find. Father was